One of the stores in my area, Atomic Empire, hosted a BattleTech tournament earlier this month, and I played in it. We have a pretty good local BattleTech scene in North Carolina's Triangle area, but the tournament also pulled in a number of people from out of state like author Jason Hanza and some of the folks from Goonhammer. For this video, I'm going to cover my prep for the tournament, the list that I brought, and how my games went. Forces for the tournament were built with a 7,000 BB limit. You had to pick a faction, but then you could draw on any units available to the faction across all of BattleTech's eras. Only battle mechs and battle armor were allowed. Units had to be either introductory or standard rules, and named or unique variants were not allowed. Each force had to be at least 3 units and no more than 6. You could have 2 units of the same chassis, but they had to be different variants or configurations. Skills for units could be anywhere from 3 to 6 with no other limitations. Some specialty ammo was allowed. In addition to basics like Artemis and arc-capable missiles, you could have Inferno missiles. Then autocannons could take armor-piercing or precision ammo. You were allowed to take empty ammo bins, and then all of your ammo choices were locked across all 3 games of the tournament. Several optional rules were in effect for the tournament: expanded backward movement, floating criticals, expanded arm flipping, enhanced flamers, and front-loaded initiative were all in play. Alternate attack declarations were used so that when declaring attacks you don't have to lock in which weapons were being shot, just the targets. Then we each had 1 edge point to use during the tournament. This could be used to force a reroll on a hit location or a critical hit confirmation, but again, it was only 1 per whole tournament, not 1 per game. For this tournament, the scenarios were shared in advance. The packet contained 6 scenarios, 3 of which would actually end up being played at the tournament. Most of the scenarios were structured to have scoring from both destroying enemy units and from doing something with objectives. The first scenario, Grey Monday, was a King of the Hill scenario. It featured a single central objective, which was a level 2 indestructible building, and you could earn points by having more units within 2 hexes of it than your opponent. This scenario was going to pull units into a dense fight at the middle of the battlefield and reward brawlers that could stand in the scoring zone while dealing and taking lots of damage. The second scenario, Stand Up Fight, was the oddball. This one is just points for destroying enemies with no other objectives in play. Like Grey Monday, it would reward being able to survive while dealing out damage, but without the need to be at a central objective, it was more open to mobile combatants and long-range snipers. The third scenario, Communication Suppression, had 3 objective markers across the center line of the battlefield. To score objective points, a unit would need to be standing on one of those markers. Then at the end of turn 3, 1 random objective disappears. This scenario rewards being able to reach objectives quickly, while having enough durability to just stand on them and be shot. The fourth scenario, Objective Raid, also had 3 objective markers. In this one, mechs needed to pick up the objectives to score. You couldn't use jump jets, mask, or superchargers while carrying one, and if you got knocked prone or took a crit, then it would be dropped into an adjacent hex. For this scenario, fast units were the best choice for claiming objectives. The best case was to be able to get to an objective quick and then keep it away from the enemy after that. The fifth scenario, Base Assault, is focused on building destruction. Each player has 3 buildings that have a construction factor of 150, and victory points are earned for completely destroying your opponent's buildings. Buildings are easy targets thanks to being immobile, but depending on the map, line of sight could be a challenge. And then with 150 damage needed to get through a building, the big thing this scenario was asking for in a force is the ability to put out a lot of damage. The final scenario, Push the Line, has 4 objective markers. These can be claimed by a unit standing on them, but then the objective moves based on how heavy the unit claiming it is. For force building, this is similar to Communication Suppression, with quick durable units being the best choice. The displacement means that control of the objective is more likely to alternate though, since it will move away from any claiming unit. With those force building rules and scenarios known, it was time to decide what I wanted to bring. Anytime there is an upcoming tournament, practice games end up being a pretty common occurrence during our weekly BattleTech nights. When locals first started practicing for this one, I hadn't really thought about what I wanted to bring because I was still preparing myself for Motor City Mayhem. I had just finished painting a Pouncer though, so it was a good opportunity to get it on the game table. I spent some time looking at its different configurations and picked out the Pouncer H. It has a lot of damage output thanks to 4 heavy-medium lasers, and seemed like it would be fun to play while also being priced fairly reasonably compared to some of the other Pouncer configs. To go with the Pouncer, I picked 2 ATM-focused designs, the Linebacker E and the Ice Ferret E. Both of those were reasonably quick and able to deliver a lot of damage once they were in HE missile range. The last unit I picked for this list was a Gargoyle Prime. It is a decently quick assault mech, even if it doesn't have much offense. That would in theory make it a good choice for running to or standing on objectives, and then its LBX autocannons and SRMs also make it a bigger threat once there are holes open in an enemy unit's armor. The 2 games that I played with this list were Objective Raid and Base Assault. I think it did decent in both of those games, but it did have some drawbacks. With only 4 units, I felt like I'd struggle with the multi-objective scenarios. Then it also didn't have any good options for targeting high TMM units. The only accuracy boost in the whole list was the Gargoyle's LBX cluster shots, which don't match the accuracy or the damage of pulse lasers. The next list I put together had plenty of pulse lasers. Its core was a Sagittar and a Penetrator. Up close, both of them could fire a lot of pulse lasers in order to threaten high TMM targets. They could also both take a decent amount of damage before going down. Backing them up, I took a Centurion CN9D and a Valkyrie C. The Centurion is a tough medium that is able to move 6'9", and then the Valkyrie is a TMM4 jumper. Both of them could be useful going for objectives. With the few remaining BV I had in my budget, I added a squad of Grey Death scout suits. They don't have any guns, but could jump 4 and threaten leg attacks. I only played one test game with this list. My main goals for that game were getting a feel for whether the slow Sagittar would feel worthwhile, and seeing if the low-cost battle armor could accomplish anything. Both answers were no. My opponent that game focused fire on the Sagittar and took it down before it was able to deal much damage. Then the battle armor missed their one leg attack attempt. The Valkyrie was also disappointing with its LRMs not pairing well with jumping around. It made me wish that it was a Spider 9M instead. At this point, I was in the final week before lists were due and I still hadn't decided what I wanted to bring. Of the two lists that I had played games with, I liked the feel of the first one more, so I decided to try something similar. I'd go with a core of 2 or 3 relatively mobile, heavier assault mechs, and then fill out the remaining BV with lighter units. Looking through what I have painted, I decided on a Spartan as my list anchor. It is a 5'8" assault mech that carries an ER-PPC and 3 medium pulse lasers. That would give me a fairly durable unit that could get to objectives, and then have a decent chance of hitting high TMM targets too. I backed up the Spartan with 2 heavies with good mobility, a Guillotine and an Exterminator. Both of those were relatively low on firepower with 4 medium lasers as their main weapons, but they would hopefully be able to get where they were needed and survive a while. Then I filled out my list with a Mongoose that could race around and shoot things with pulse lasers, and a Battle Cobra with an abundance of medium lasers that I'd be able to have as a bit of a gunboat for assisting my heavier units as needed. When I was figuring out the list, I originally slotted in the Battle Cobra to carry battle armor since it's the only Omni mech I have painted for Comstar, but then I didn't end up taking any battle armor to go with it. Overall, I thought this list would give me some durable units that still had enough speed to claim objectives. The Mongoose could also go for objectives with its speed or hunt down fast enemies. The Battle Cobra was a bit of a gamble. It is slow for its tonnage, so it would die quick if my opponent wanted to focus on it, but it also had enough firepower to be a nasty surprise to anyone underestimating it. With my list figured out and submitted, it was just a week's wait until the day of the tournament. The schedule for that Saturday was to get to the store by 10:30 in the morning, play the first round, have a break for lunch, then play the other 2 games. As long as things stayed on schedule, we'd all be done by dinner time. For the first game, I was paired with Brian. He had brought a Draconis Combine list consisting of a Tenchi A Mauler 3K, a Warhammer 2C3, a Spider 9M, and units of Thunderbird and Kage battle armor. This is a list archetype that I was kind of expecting to run into at the tournament thanks to Goonhammer's articles about the similar tournament at the Richmond Open. The Tenchi A is a very BV-efficient assault mech with 3 large variable speed pulse lasers, then the Mauler added another pair of VSPs, and the Warhammer 2C brought a bunch of targeting computer-linked medium pulse lasers. With plenty of mass and accurate firepower, they'd be a challenge to deal with. The mission for this round was Grey Monday. That scenario really favors durable brawlers, fighting up close in the middle, so I was not optimistic about my odds. I knew that I'd need to race to the objective early to try to score some before Brian was able to get his assault mechs there to secure it. My lighter mechs also wouldn't stand much chance against all of that firepower with -3 2-hit modifiers. As we played, I benefited a bit by terrain and Brian's choice of approach towards the center. A few tall hexes and the positioning of his mechs let me mostly avoid taking fire in the first 2 turns while earning victory points for holding the objective. Then on turn 3, his big mechs reached the center and I needed to shift to trying to kill them. I used my unit's speed to try to get advantageous positioning against his units, which paid off in the 4th turn when I got 3 units behind the Tenchi. My Battle Cobra got lucky with its laser volley and scored 3 critical hits to the back of the Tenchi, 2 of which hit MRM ammo bins. While that didn't destroy the Tenchi, it was left crippled with an unconscious mech warrior. When time was called before we moved to turn 5, that gave me a narrow 29-26 victory thanks to the Tenchi being worth more than my crippled Battle Cobra. If we'd gone another round, I think the score would probably have swung back in Brian's favor. With the first game wrapped up, we all set up our forces for paint judging. Then I hurried over to the nearby Burger King for a quick lunch before looking around at everyone else's miniatures and submitting my vote for best painted. These are just some of the pictures I snapped while looking around at everyone else's miniatures. I'll wrap up the video with a few more photos too. When the break was over, I got paired with Joseph for round 2. He had a mercenary list that featured a Hammerhands 5D, a Verfolger 6T, a Trebuchet 9N, an Omni Firestarter B, a Spider 9M, and a unit of Grey Death heavy suits. This list featured a lot of accuracy boost with multiple pulse lasers, a targeting computer on the Verfolger, and precision ammo for the Hammerhands. His mechs also had pretty decent mobility, so they'd be able to get around the battlefield pretty well. The The randomly chosen scenario for this round was communication suppression. With 3 objectives in play, my basic plan was going to be to try to focus on controlling 2 of them, while keeping just enough pressure on the third to ensure Joseph couldn't take it for granted. As the game started, I was able to get my mongoose to the central objective right away. It couldn't just sit on an objective and survive though, so on the next turn that center objective went unclaimed, while my guillotine and Joseph's hammer hands each claimed one of the objectives on the sides. During turn 3, things started to swing in his favor when he was able to hold the center objective again, and then at the end of turn 3, my guillotine safely held objective is the one that disappeared from the battlefield. My Spartan took a head hit for 10 damage that turn 2. Joseph rolled a 12 on the crit confirmation, but I used my edge point to keep it in play. On turn 4, my units were starting to get battered. I managed to take out his battle armor and position myself to push his units off of both objectives. Unfortunately, my Spartan lost its head to a second head hit before being able to shove Joseph's fire starter. Combined with the other units on my side that were crippled, this resulted in an 84-43 loss for me. I think that score looks a bit more lopsided than the game actually was though. If my Spartan wouldn't have taken its second head hit that turn, that could have lowered Joseph's score by nearly 30 points between the kill points for it and pushing the fire starter off of its objective. And then for the tournament's final round, I was paired with John. He was playing the Knight's Defensor with a Templar, a Cataphract 4X, a Crusader 3D, a Legionnaire 1X, a Javelin 11B, and Hauberk 2 battle armor. His list had decent firepower with the Legionnaire and Javelin able to move around pretty quickly. The scenario for this round was Objective Raid. This was one that I thought could favor my list since I had faster units overall. The trick would be staying safe after grabbing the objectives, especially because our table's battle mat didn't offer much cover. Things started off well for me with my Mongoose, Guillotine, and Spartan all holding objectives by the end of turn 2. I also had taken the leg off of his Javelin that turn. The next turn his Legionnaire was able to take the objective away from my Spartan, but I held on to the other 2. At that point, my Mongoose and badly damaged Spartan were focused on hiding, while the rest of my units engaged John's forces. We only got to play part of turn 5, but John risked his Legionnaire and the objective it was holding that turn in order to go after my Spartan, and he was rewarded by being able to finish it off and then score a bunch of kill points for it. Getting to the objectives fast and then holding on to them and hiding really worked out for me this game, and I won a 73-48 victory despite the loss of my Spartan. And with that, the tournament was over. I was happy with going 2-1, and by points I ended up towards the middle of the 36 players. There were 6 undefeated players, so the prize for Mech Commander went to the one with the most points scored in their games, Liberty from Goonhammer. Then Master Technician for Best Painted went to Joshua Bressel, and Solaris Champion for Best Sportsman went to Bashir. Overall, I enjoyed my 3 games at the tournament. My opponents were each fun to play against, and their varied list and the different scenarios helped each game feel fresh. I think my list probably could have done better with a bit more firepower, and if I were to play it again at a tournament, I'd look to swap out either the Exterminator or Guillotine for something with a little more damage output. For the tournament itself, I think the biggest thing I'd want to see changed is the length of the rounds. With 2 hours, my games generally only made it through 4 turns, and I'd preferred the time to get in another turn or 2. The list building was also open to some cheesiness thanks to the restrictions being fairly lax. The real fix for that, I think, is in updating the battle value system. But in the meantime, not placing limits on pulse weapons, high MP jumpers, amount of special ammo, etc. can really limit what sorts of units make sense to bring to a competitive game. But as I said, I still had a good time playing at the tournament. If you've never been to a local tournament, then I encourage you to find one and try it out. Approach it as an opportunity to get in a few fun games and play against some new folks, and I think you can have plenty of fun without worrying too much about where you end up in the rankings. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and would like to see more from me, you can subscribe here on YouTube at scottsgameroom.com or on Patreon. I'd especially like to thank my patrons at the supporter tier, Jake, Joshua, Camilla, Cogwar, and Zachary.